welcome to a special episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. The reason why it's special, well, joining myself, Nick Golding, and lead editor Ian Parks to look back at Imola and ahead to Monaco is none other than former Alpine Executive Director Marcin Budkowski. Marcin, firstly, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It is brilliant to have you on. To kick things off, how are you? How have you been? And what have you been up to recently?
Pleasure. Thank you guys for the invite. Look, we're here in Imola. Obviously, I was here with Ian covering the race for Polish television. I'm doing a little bit of moonlighting as an expert for Polish TV. So I visit the paddock a few times this year for that. But that's just one of the things we've been doing the last few years. Doing a bit of driver management, looking after a few of the young, most talented Polish drivers we have in motorsport, and trying to help them to go through the ranks in the various formulas towards Formula One, using my contacts and obviously my experience of the field. We set up the management company. As you have the photo, but it's cutting from the logo on the image. You need a wide lens for this podcast. We set up a driver management company with Anthony Kumpan, the GT driver, exactly Max Verstappen's uncle, for the fun of it, and Filip Górski, whose son is racing in go-karts in the actual level, as well as Anthony's son, Avras. We have the management company. We're helping talents from around the world to get into karting in the Italian categories. The best karting championships in the world. And then taking them forward to Formula 4 and the various formulas, all to GT, all to Euro NASCAR, all to endurance, the different categories. So that's quite exciting, and it's really nice to work with talented young drivers and rediscover kind of more grassroots motorsports. Because we're here in the F1 paddock and everything is glitter and money and etc. And then you go back to the real motorsports where people with a lot of passion assemble cars in tents and that puts all the time and effort and passion in it, and young kids are full of talent and learning, and it's quite rewarding, to be honest, to do that. And then connecting to that, I'm Polish originally, although I grew up in France, and motorsports is popular in Poland, but it's more culture of rallying than it is of circuit racing. Obviously, we had Robert Kubica, who made the sport hugely popular in Poland because he was so talented and winning, and Polish people were proud to have a Polish guy at this level. But since then, again, there's some work to do to make it as popular as it was. We share a passion here, all three of us, for Formula One and for motorsport. And it's nice to try to put a bit of effort in making it more popular, but also more accessible. Motorsport is a tough sport. It's expensive. It's not easy to start. So we've set up with Filip Górski, one of my business partners in the management. We set up also a foundation in Poland, which is called Racing Future. And we have an academy, the karting academy. So we have go-karts that's professional go-karts, racing go-karts, not the rental ones, but like the proper ones. And we've set up this karting school in Poland. We just started a month ago, where we provide all the kit. If you're a parent and you want your kid to race, or the kid wants to race, sometimes it's the parent's dream, sometimes it's the kid's dream. But if that's something you want to do, you need to buy a go-kart. You need to buy all the equipment. You need to hire a mechanic. You often need to hire a driver coach, because the kid has to learn, especially at a young age. You have to go to a circuit. You probably have to buy a weight, something to arrange something to transport the go-kart. You need to go to the circuit. Be with your son or your daughter while they're pounding the track and trying to get some mileage and learning. So it's a big investment of money. But also of time, and not all the families have the money or the time or the will to do that. And we are making karting like you would, with your kid to do football or horse riding after school. We're doing karting. So the kids come to the track, which is at the moment just outside of Warsaw in Poland, and we provide everything. We provide the cars, provide the equipment, we provide the mechanic, the coach, for a very affordable price, and they can train, they can learn. Every week we're doing sessions. Every week has a different theme. Braking, cornering. We use the current and etc. And we were taking them through the ranks and through the little all the lessons and everything. And they start at 6, 7. They start obviously older, but that maybe the youngest could take is 6-year-old. And it's also a great way to scout for new talent, because by making it more accessible, you get by definition people who's normally you wouldn't have tried your carts, and so you widen your pool of potential talent. And also starting early, and maybe parents would be worried about safety when the kid is 6 or 7, and we're providing a safe environment to learn. So we're widening the pool of talents, and hopefully we'll find new talents, and then the talents we can help them going into racing and go-karts, initially at national level, and then at international level, and then to knows, maybe to the formulas and to Formula One. So it's an exciting project, and it's quite a rewarding one as well.
Well, it
Wow.
sounds absolutely amazing. I urge all our listeners and viewers to go and check it out. But actually, on that topic of supporting young drivers, if we look at any global championship right now, the calendars are getting bigger. Social media is having a bigger presence. Mental health as well is obviously an ever-pressing topic. Has the need and the importance of supporting young drivers changed considerably over recent years?
I think it's become a lot more professional, and the preparation that these guys get. And by preparation, I'm not only talking about driving and about
Yeah.
work with the engineers, which we all kind of have in mind when we talk about preparation, but the mental preparation, how these kids are solid and mature. I remember last year we had the Paramelis and the Colapitas starting. We were all impressed by their on-track performance and their maturity. But also, like, these guys who interview the pen coming out of the car, they're like Antonelli now, they're 18, 19-year-old. I think of myself when I was 18 or 19, I was a kid, the maturity I had compared to these guys is, it's just nowhere close. And I think that's, Toto referred once to young drivers as like traumatized kids that have been put in a go-kart and left alone on the track in the rain or something like this. But there's something to it. It's they've been all their life, while we like normal people were just going to school and having fun with our friends and doing sports and whatever. We're just traveling the world and racing, and exposed to problematics that normally only adults get exposed to, and they grow much quicker, not only as sports people but also as mentally and as young daddies, and I think that's impressive. And when we talk about preparation, the question was about preparation. It's a school of life. What sport is a school of life at this level? Like any very high level athlete, it's a school of life, and that's why also these projects that we're doing, all the educational projects I mentioned, they're not only to produce sports, because we all know that out of hundreds of karting drivers, there'll be a few Formula drivers and maybe one Formula One driver, and that's not even a guarantee. But all of them will have learned much more than driving. They will have learned and matured as young people, and I think sport and motorsport is part of it. They are also educational projects, not only sport education.
I can imagine. Now it's very early days, Martin, but it'd be aim to produce another Robert Kubica.
Yeah, I think Robert hates when we say that, and it matters because it's been used and abused. But yeah, of course, because there's two things. This the pride of a country. It's having a Formula One driver. We see it now with Colapinto. Maybe that pride is sometimes a bit misplaced and a bit exaggerated. Italians are happy to have a driver again in Formula One, and he can Antonelli. So there is this kind of national pride, and we all see it. We all watch fairly random sport through the Olympics just because national team is winning. So there's always that national kind of identity and desire to see one of our people. But but also for me, it acts like a North Star. If you're a young Pole today and started partying, and you see that today's elite is not going through up the ranks, whether it's for lack of support or for lack of budget or not only talent, and is not able to go to Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1, then you're lacking that North Star, if you want. You're lacking that motivation, that all the effort I'm going to put as a driver and my family is going to put to support me, it is probably, useless because I have no chance to make it to the top. So if you have this kind of F1 driver or F2, F3 driver or Le Mans driver or IndyCar driver, let's not only look at it through the lens of Formula 1. If you have these guys at the very top level, you say, okay, I can make it as well. And I think, we'll talk about this for girls now and the F1 Academy and the fact that we need to show young girl drivers that, it's possible to get at the top level. But I think it's the same for male drivers in the way that you have to show that there is an outcome possible at the top level for people to believe it.
Can I just pick up on something else that you mentioned earlier as well? Max Verstappen's on for. What's he like to work?
He's very good. He's retired now from driving. He used to drive up to Formula 4, and he was very good. He ran out of budget as a lot of kids, do at his level. And switched to GT. He's a hugely successful driver at GT. He won the 24 Hours of Zolder 6 times, I think. Is the record. He owns the record. He now runs his own GT team in the Belgian Championship. He won Euro NASCAR as well when NASCAR came to Europe, and that's also interesting because I think there's an underdeveloped area of racing in Europe. So I think you're looking at placing drivers there as well, because then Euro NASCAR is a great way to get into NASCAR actually, and I think it would be good to have a few more European drivers in the US. I actually had dinner with Daniel Kvyat here on Friday night in Imola. We good mates since the Alpine days where he was our reserve driver, and he tried his hand on NASCAR. I said, that's not easy to crack if you're an outsider. But yeah, Anthony's great. Anthony's a very fun character. Forbidden. He's won a lot in his past. Steer racing, has a true but racing. He's cute as racing, and also he's a lot of fun to do out.
As also you mentioned, you are both still currently in Emilia Romagna. Excuse me. Ian, for you, an interesting weekend has got to be said. Lots of talking points, but what was your biggest takeaway?
I think the fact that if there was any doubt going into the weekend about Max Verstappen's title credentials for this season, they were blown away by that particular performance.
Yeah.
We look at Friday, and again, it was a typical Red Bull Max Verstappen Friday. Lots of difficulties, lots of things to try and get on top of. But he came out of that, he and the team, and once again delivered almost a near perfect lap on Saturday. Just a fraction of a second shy of dislodging Oscar Piastri from pole position. And then, as we saw in the Grand Prix, a poor getaway from Max, a really poor getaway, very unusual, but my word, that overtake into that first chicanes, it was just absolutely magnificent. And that was effectively the defining moment of the Grand Prix. Yes, we had the virtual safety car. Yes, we had the safety car that followed after that. And that right at the back end of the Grand Prix bunched up the field, and there was an opportunity for the McLaren to have a go at Max, but no, Max once again just floored it and was off sailing into the distance. And at the end, it was a comfortable overall victory for him. So yes, he's now really closed the gap on the two McLarens. He's going to need Yuki Tsunoda to do a bit more work though to help him with that title push again, try and claim that fifth driver's title. But nevertheless, I feel now, I don't know about you, Marcin, I feel he's right back in it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it will all defend if the Red Bulls were clearly quicker and the pace is better this weekend. The Max Red Bull, if you want, driver car union was up there in pace, and that's Andreas Sella spoke to after the race recognizes as well. That on pace they were just very, very quick to do. If something as quick for me, you would be quicker on the McLaren. If that's the case on future circuits, then definitely Max is in there. What we've seen so far from Red Bull is they've been up there at some tracks and not up on other tracks. And I think there was a track that was a bit more in their favor. Monaco is an oddball. And it's going to be a lot of Max, and I'm sure we'll come back to this in the prediction. But I think Max is going to be able to show these talents, and it's going to be more important than Barcelona. Of all tracks, is the judge of where your car is. That's why most races in Barcelona we have two McLarens, two Ferraris, two Mercedes, etc. Because it's much more the car than the driver. Also because most drivers have done 1 million+ kilometers on this circuit over the career, know every inch of it. But Barcelona is going to be a real good judge of where the cars stand. I think if Red Bull is able to produce a car that is within a few tenths of the McLaren, then Max can do the last bit of the job.
Barcelona even more so this year, because as we know, that regulation change is coming from 26, and the teams very shortly after are going to get full focus on 20.
So I think Barcelona is probably going to be the last upgrade to the season. There might be some small bits and pieces, some trading fast that will come later, but that's going to be the last of the big upgrades. I mean, that regulation change, and nobody knows what to make of it. We know that Ferrari is bringing a big upgrade to Barcelona rather than here. Whether that's a sign that the front wing implications will the front wing is influencing the whole of the cars are happy. So if you change significantly the front wing or its section modes, then it will need to adapt the rest of the area. So that might be a sign that they'd be either using that heavily or that change is impacting the rest of the heavily. And that's also, I think, why they were a little bit out of sync. A lot of people brought upgrades here, significant upgrades, and they made a step up, and Ferrari it happened. And it's a risky strategy because they, for at least a race, maybe two, they will lag a bit, and then they might make a bigger step than others in Barcelona. I think it's everybody gets at this stage what happens in Barcelona and how this Red Bull would, but like.
You mentioned a couple of moments ago predictions, so I do need to very quickly look back at our predictions from the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. And of course, for those who may be new to this podcast, for every Grand Prix, Ian, fellow colleague Sam Coop, and I have to predict who will claim pole, the fastest lap in the race, which team will produce the fastest pit stop, who will finish in the top 3 in the race, and who, a new rule from last weekend, who will finish 10th. We also have a fan represent the fans for each Grand Prix. It was a bit different for last week because we had somebody that you know quite well, Marcin, represent the fans. We had Otmar Zafnau, who, I'll be honest, didn't do brilliantly. I've got to be said, unfortunately for Otmar. He's not done you very well.
Yeah,
predictions, from Imola. And Otmar has let the fans down a little bit. Otmar was saved by DHL, should I say, when they announced that Ferrari once again got the fastest pit stops, which actually Ian, you, Sam, and Otmar all said Ferrari would get the fastest pit stops. So you'll get 3 points for that.
Predict Ferrari every week, and I'm going to get a chunk.
Honestly, that's 6 out of 7 now. It's unheard of. It's quite remarkable.
I know.
Otmar also got Norris and Piastri in slightly the wrong order. We did get some points for that, but overall, I only got 5 points. Otmar got 5. Ian, you got 8 because you also said Yuki Tsunoda to finish in P10, a brilliant recovery from him. And Sam, who, for a bit of insight, Marcin, our colleague Sam typically has the worst predictions. He's been bottom of our leaderboards. It's normally the comical part of the podcast. He actually got 11 points. So it's a big rise from Sam, which means in the leaderboard, Sam does just remain in last on 35 points. Because of Otmar's poor performance, the fans are just ahead on 36. Ian, you're on 42, and I am on 47. So the lead is down to 5 points. We'll do the Monaco, you're closing down, we'll do the Monaco predictions at the end of the podcast. But we've got to start with Max Verstappen and really get into Imola, because did we expect it, Marcin, for Red Bull to be quick? Because we've had this back and forth of Red Bull saying that the car's not great, Max is making the difference. McLaren has been saying, no, the car, the RB21, it is better than they've been making out. Is it true now that actually the RB21 is a better package than we thought?
I think we need a few races to figure that one out, to be honest. It looked on pace this weekend for sure. Red Bull have started this thread is strange. The tradition is strong of a word, but they've had like pretty average Fridays, and then when we kind of count them off for, and don't think they're going to be anywhere close to fight for pole on Saturday, then they pull something out of the hat between Friday night and Saturday. And obviously, I'm saying pull something out of the hat like if it was magic or luck, but it's not. It's where it gets its understanding. But really, they haven't been very good at actually maybe getting it right on the Friday straight away, which is strange for a team as strong and as experienced. But they've been extremely good at saving the situation between Friday and Saturday, and that means start work, understanding the issues, good backup from the factory, in terms of analysis and simulator work. And a number of times you were thinking, Red Bull lower, and then Saturday, Red Bull and obviously Max, that once he gets a decent missing package, makes the difference still. Have been up there on Saturday, and I think this is one of these because where they were competitive but not like blisteringly quick on the Friday, and then they made a step again on the Saturday. Look, I think the package is not bad. It just doesn't seem consistent enough to win today, because there's few races where they just were not on the pace, and I think you play them through that, and they're within, they said a few tenths of McLaren, then yes, Max is very much up there. And that situation with Oscar and Lando, taking point of each other and fighting with each other is gonna hurt us. So I think the constructors, nobody really have a doubt that the McLaren will run with it. But drivers, I think it's still open, and for us, it's great. It is something to talk about.
And then McLaren's lead at the top of the Constructors' Championship is a good little stat for you, Nick. It's actually 1 point more than the combined total of the Mercedes and Red Bull in second and third. So that gives you some ideas of just how good that McLaren is doing at the moment. But for the Drivers' Championship, which is the one we all talk about at the end of the day, yes, it's a team sport, also to testify quite naturally, but everybody focuses on the drivers. It's what draws the most interest. And if we've got a three-way battle for that driver's title this year, which at the moment, after the first 7 Grand Prix, it looks like that is going to be the case, then it's going to be a fascinating tussle all the way through to the end of the season. Yes, it was only a sample of one with the new Red Bull upgrade on that car, but at least for this circuit in particular around Imola, it delivered. Now, can it deliver around a street circuit? And can it deliver around a particularly defining track in Barcelona, which, as Marcin said, if you're good there, more often, you're going to be good everywhere else as well. That is going to be the crucial Grand Prix, I think, that, as I say, will probably most likely define the shape of the rest of the season.
I want to talk a little bit about Oscar Piastri, because obviously claim pole position, given what Imola is like, everyone kind of thought it was kind of expected he was going to win the race. But we've praised him a lot this season for just being flawless, so consistent, not really making any mistakes, with the exception of what we saw obviously in Australia. But he noted himself, and he looked like a frustrated figure, that he just braked too early into that first corner, allowing Max to pull off what he did. Ian, were you surprised by Oscar on Sunday, and the fact that actually, unlike in Jeddah, where we saw him take that fight to Max in the first corner and ultimately come out on top, it almost felt like he backed out a little bit this time?
Well, I know Jack Villeneuve absolutely slaughtered him, didn't he, on Sky TV?
He did.
Good old track. He never pulls any punches, does he? Oh dear, oh dear. I think it was one of those. I don't know. Oscar was obviously maybe caught a little bit by surprise, because he knew he'd got the good start, as mentioned. And he almost perhaps he wasn't expecting Max to be there at that particular point. So in reflecting, replaying it back in his mind, what unfolded, he says he braked a bit too early, but he probably, looking back, he probably actually braked at the right time for what he thought was going to be a perfectly fine move for that chicane. It's just that all of a sudden Max Verstappen was bang there alongside him, and perhaps caught a little bit by surprise. He had to give way, otherwise it would have been a collision between the two going through that chicane. So yes, Oscar can beat himself up a little bit for saying he braked a little bit too early, but overall, bearing in mind what Oscar has produced so far this season, 4 wins from 7, obviously, in the lead of the championship, he's certainly looking more composed, more mature than at any time so far. And that's quite obvious, because he's now got that little bit more experience as well. So for me at the minute, he's still looking like the driver to beat on track and potentially for this season. at least Lando showed a little bit of fight as well, as we saw after qualifying. Lando once again beating himself up for his own little tiny mistakes that he's been making. But as I say, in the Grand Prix, you could sense that Lando got the bit between his teeth and really wanted to make a point. What about you about it in the McLaren job?
Yeah, going back to that mistake from Max, I mean, if you look at the helicopter camera, the aerial pictures, it looks like a Formula 1 car driving around a Formula 2 car. It's incredible. The amount of food Max carries at that corner compared to Oscar, it's just mind-blowing. And it just shows that, the confidence with which Max, goes into that corner and the contrast with the carefulness and probably over carefulness that Oscar deploys there. I think just looking at it, and I haven't spoken to Oscar or anyone after it, but it looks like Oscar was more concerned about Russell on his inside than Max on the outside, and it's logical because Russell got a really good start, and the combination of him trying to cover more, because when you look at it, he said he could have moved 2 meters a bit to the right, and he would have been fine, and Max would have had no room to do that. But I think he was more concerned about Russell. And a little bit of a careful on the combination of that was that pass. Andrea Stella, I had a chat with him, and with the Polish TV guys, so I interviewed him after the race, and he said, it's similar. If you over defend here, you can easily end up in the grapple. And I felt, fair enough, but there was a big margin between over defending and what Oscar did, which I think was perfect, not what we did. But anyway, live and learn. We forget sometimes the young drivers, and it's a lot of fresh and little things to take into account. I think it's a good lesson. And Oscar is a clever guy, and he will take that home and become a better driver because of it. To McLaren, there was very little this weekend. We've seen again one of these situations where Norris was probably the quicker one, of the two in the practice sessions. It wasn't obvious in the timesheets, but he was quite obvious in the telemetry that if Norris put the lap, put a lap together, then he was up there, and he didn't again in qualifying. And for me, there's a question there. We talk a lot about mental strength, and I think, Oscar is showing a lot of mental strength, and Lando is showing the ups and downs sometimes, and it could be a question of mental strength. We all know that qualifying is a brutal exercise where, you need to be very, very strong in your head because you have very little time and a lot of pressure on the shoulders. Or is it something else? And personally, I think it's a combination of the two, but it's probably more the second reason I'm about to talk about is we forget to qualify is literally 110%, extracting 110% of the car and the tires and everything. And I say that because I do believe that it's actually you're putting the car more than it's capable of delivering, and you're trying to control it, and you're finding balance in the car, putting front wing in front wing to the very, very limits of the stability of the car, and trying to control it just to extract the maximum performance out of the area and tire. And you need to be in full osmosis, in full confidence for the car to do that. And I think Lando's struggling a little bit with the car, the characteristics. And that's fine when you have a full tank of fuel and your pneumatic tires. That's fine when you practice and we were testing the limits, but we just getting close to them because we see they want to make mistakes and you have some work to do on the setup and testing components. And then you get to quality and you need that extra little step, And if you're not in full connection with the car at that state, you can't. Either you'll make mistakes or you'll you just lose. You don't have that full confidence. You can't extract that last bit of fault. And I think that's been an issue, the remedies here, and that's why we're seeing that in very big in practice. And then in qualifying, can't quite put it together because it doesn't work. And Oscar has this confidence, and obviously Max, I think you talk a lot about the difference with his teammates. I think Max, and I've seen this with very, very best in the work, the ones I work with, they have the ability of running a car that is inherently unstable, because that just edge of the envelope kind of as an engineer would say, edge of the envelope setup is the one that delivers the most fault. So, and And Max has this insane car control where any other driver would sit in his setup and just say, this car isn't driving. And Max is driving and then it's shutting. And what that means is that lead the teams to develop, a very peaky car, the car that has very, very high performance, but in a very, very narrow band of music. Because Max can do it. And the more they develop the car in this direction, the more whoever driving the same car is struggling. And we've seen seasons where with Checo, whole Checo, who's been on the receiving end of that for seasons and seasons. Well, at the beginning of the season, he's competitive, and sometimes he's even, at the level of Max, even a little bit quicker on some circuits. And then just like progressively during the season, he's just like getting more and more lost and more in trouble. And on top of that, once you kind of start losing confidence in the car, start being able to extract that performance and start making mistakes, then it erodes your confidence and it compounds. And why I'm referring to that is I think between Lando and Oscar, that might make the difference over the championship, is that if Lando through, worked with the team in terms of setup or car development, it's too late for car development because 26 is leaving and the team will stop developing. But if he doesn't get that osmosis with car, if he doesn't get that pure confidence, then he will probably continue to have these kind of ups and downs and, what we would call under delivering. We're still going to come to the launcher and we're looking at the TV. But not being able to extract the maximum of what he has.
If you we know Andrea Bella is. We have also seen now during his time as team principal, he seems to have a really good grip on driver management as well. But if you were in Andrea's shoes, what would you be saying to Lando to try and ensure that, to try and eradicate these little tiny errors that he is making during qualifying? Is proving the difference for him this season.
Very, very complicated one, because if it's issue with car confidence, then you can tell him whatever you want. At the end of the day, if he doesn't feel the limits of the car and able to exploit them, then you can tell him whatever you want. Apart from telling him, we'll be putting all the efforts we can as a team to, understand how to set up and etc. and solve that. That's great. So, if it's a mental thing, again, it's complicated, but it's really trying to put your driver in that kind of mental space where they are, they feel it's like a cocoon. Like the team is to be like a cocoon for them. And we've seen drivers in the past like this, because Federico Mazza, or these, think now about more examples, but of drivers that needed to have this kind of warm feeling of confidence in the team surrounding them to be able to perform. And they're not able, if the team's a bit rough and a little bit, pushy, that they're not able to forage. The issue there is Oscar, and Oscar he's not a political driver. He almost doesn't need to, the fact that he's there and he's delivering speed comment, and that, journalists write about it and say, oh my God, Oscar, the new Iceman or whatever, and he's so strong, and Lando is not that strong. You can see all these things. I'm not reading the press. I'm not reading the comments. Yes, okay, great, but it reaches you. It reaches you because with the TV pen, people will, journalists will ask questions, and even if we don't read social media or the press, this kind of vibe will reach you, and it's inspiring. I think what Lando needs is a pole position and a win, and just go back home and thinking, I'm the best. I'm gonna be good.
And it's a different type of pressure as well this year, Nick, when you think about it for Lando, because as we discussed post Grand Prix update on Sunday, last year, Lando was pretty much not de facto number one, but certainly he always had that edge over Oscar. And as we saw towards the end of the season, he was given preferential treatment by the team. This time around, however, it's very different. Now he's got a teammate that is, properly fighting with him. It's not the Lando versus Max battle as it was for the most part last season. Now it's Lando versus Max versus Oscar in particular. So it's a very different dynamic that Lando is having to deal with this year.
Well, at least he's got the perfect venue to hopefully claim a pole position and a win this weekend in Monaco. I think that'd be a pretty good confidence boost, I'd imagine. Very quickly, two more talking points to whiz through before the predictions, which I cannot wait for. And we can't discuss Imola without talking about Ferrari. And it's been a weird season for them, it feels, Marcin, at times, as I did on Sunday, showed some really good race pace, but of course, 24 hours before that, a double Q2 elimination. What have you made of Ferrari this season?
I think, as I say, it's this kind of irregular, an ability to deliver consistently week in, week out, qualifying in ranks and delivery and strategy and etc. Just doesn't look like well together, both the car and sometimes as a team. I think it's probably a bit better than seen in some occasions over the past years, but good still. This weekend, clearly the race pace was there, and this was pretty good. But they just managed to get that qualifier right. And I was sitting watching the race with Mario Isola in the brand hospitality, and I was laughing to him. I said, they're really good in the race, and they're really bad in qualifying. It's the fault of the tires. It's your fault, Mario. You'll be lynched in Italy when you get back home, but you're making fun of it. The reality is these tires were difficult. We've seen all weekend drivers struggling to get a good lap, put a good lap together on this C6 compound. And that combined to the Imola circuit with the lap of runoffs to trick the grass, the ground, etc., make a pretty exciting on the path. Now on that, what I said to Mario on Sunday, actually, on Madrid, I've seen people, I've heard people on Saturday evening, journalists and people from the paddock saying, if Andretti's done a huge mistake of bringing these compounds, it's bad over the water. I was like, what are you talking about? You had incredible qualifying with really tricky tires. Some people getting it right, some people getting it wrong, some drivers getting it right, some team getting it right. It was really tricky. Okay, when guys are the best drivers in the world, it's teams are the best teams in the world, give them something difficult. If you can give them easy tires, predictable, then the grid's going to be like every bloody weekend, and we'll all be there on Sunday night thinking, oh my God, F1 is so boring and predictable. We had a great qualifying. It mixed things up. The race was that different because there were different tires. I say hats off to Pirelli taking the risk of bringing a Monaco tire to Imola. A few years ago, they were scared of everything because they were so scared for their reputation as a brand. Because let's face it, when you bring a new product, they have more to lose than to win. If it's bad, they have bad press. It's good. Nobody talks about that. So they're not in an easy situation. They've taken the risk. They've provided us a great weekend. Run on top performance. Again, the race was dictated by how many tires everybody had left, at the last safety car, and that checked the strategy of the race. Amazing. Great weekend. Well done. Give us, less predictability is good for F1. Teams love predictability. Predictability is boring, That's the more unpredictable, the more difficult the challenge, the more fun for us. And, made a team and the driver that handles that best win, and they'll deserve it.
Got to echo everything Marcin's just said.
Yeah,
there. I can't really
absolutely.
top that in all fairness. Just on Ferrari, though. I mean, yes, we did touch on Ferrari post Grand Prix, and as Marcin pointed out, the real big issue for Ferrari at the moment is that qualifying pace. That's something that they've got to get on top of in very short order. And a track like Monaco this weekend, if they're going to be 11th and 12th on the grid, again, as they were in Imola, there's no way they're going to be finishing 4th and 6th on Sunday in Monaco, despite the fact, and Barcelona, despite the fact we've got this new 2-stop strategy rule being implemented for the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, of course. So, yes, while race pace was good, it's all very well if you're not qualifying at the sharp end of the grid. Ferrari cannot afford to be languishing in the middle of the pack from the start of a race on Sunday, that's for sure. But it's something they know, of course they know, that they've got to get on top of very, very quickly because the clock is ticking, because they've got to shut down very soon the 25 program to focus fully on the 26.
Completely agree. Very quickly, before we do our predictions and bring this episode to an end, Marcin, I've got to ask you, of course, about the second driver change we saw in Imola. Obviously, Franco Colapinto coming in, a difficult venue to come in at, and of course, a difficult start for him in qualifying with the crash. What did you make of the driver swap and kind of everything going on at Alpine at the moment?
So we need another podcast for that, guys.
You're more than welcome to come back on.
A full 40 minutes for that.
After this brilliant episode, you're more than welcome to come on any time. So,
jokes aside, it's for a driver who was struck to start in the middle of the season, whatever the circuit is, but you just want to hear it's not just a lot different from what you hear. There's a lot to be said. The Jack got a proper chance, but probably not. I mean, we know fairness to the Jack, and I don't want to be, saying bad things about anyone, to have huge respect for all these guys. But I think the era of Alpine was not, the driver change now or etc. It was confirming Jack way too soon last year. I think they were still bruised by the Lando leaving, the missed announcement for a car, etc. And they just wanted to show confidence. We have a driver academy, and the Jack is at the top of the pile of that, and we're going to promote it from within. I think there was no need to announce Jack when they announced him. I think there was, plenty of time to look at other options. I don't think Jack is going anywhere. He was on the contract. And I don't think any other team was actually looking actively at hiring him. They could have given themselves a lot more time. They courted Carlos during the winter, that they hired Colapinto. He was all, a very, very bad mental environment for Jack on top of the pressure. Again, whether he had his chance, it was fair, it was probably not fair. Equally, he had 6 races, and, Colapinto impressed in 6 races last year. Behrman impressed in 1 race, and Zach, failed to do that. And he had impressed in his first 6 races. Bar any commercial agreements with Colapinto and his sponsors, then he would probably be still in the car. So, at the end of the day, Formula 1 is ruthless. Colapinto's debut, Flavio said, be quick, bring points, and don't crash. It sounds easy. He didn't listen. No, but jokes aside, I think there's a lot of pressure on these guys and on these kids, and sometimes they try to do too well, and then it ends up the wrong way, and it just shows that you need stability, to word that from the LP needs a translator for, but stability doesn't only apply to management or to technical stuff. You need to put the drivers in the right conditions and the right mindset, and they haven't done that with Jack, and they're not doing that with Frank now. As I said, there's a lot to be said.
Yeah.
I wish him the best, because he's really impressed with us here, not only as a driver but as a young man. I think he has incredible maturity, and he seems like a very clever guy. I think he's a good talent. I wish he does well, but he's not being put at the best of places, and don't like that.
He's under a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of pressure for, as Marcin's pointed out, for someone so young. And okay, he did reasonably well at Williams last year, but we do know that he also crashed on 3 separate occasions last year, and he has this first race, and he goes and crashes again, not in the Grand Prix, of course, but over the weekend, and that would have, at least he got through the weekend, at least he got through the race on Sunday. That would have been something for him, and which now he's got this platform, but unfortunately, we've got one of the toughest street races in the world on Sunday that he's got him, maneuver his way around. The walls are close, the barriers are close. That's not going to be easy for Franco. So fingers crossed for him that he can get his way through this weekend, because it is going to be a tough one.
Nice transition, yeah?
No.
Well, maybe he'll come up in our predictions. Who knows? Right, let's get on with the final part. Our predictions for Monaco, and I'll kick things off, as I've had at least about 40 minutes to think about this. I'm going to go Max Verstappen pole position. I just really fancy him at the moment. I think he's got some form, and the Red Bull upgrades in particular seem to work. At least that's what Helmut Marko says. So Max pole, Max victory. I'm going for Oscar second, Lando third, Red Bull fastest pit stop, Max fastest lap, and let's go Oliver Behrman in P10. Ian, do you want to show us how it's done?
No. I'm going to actually hand it over to an expert first. Let Marcin go first, and I'll finish off.
Okay, so I will go Max pole as well, and Max victory, just because I think he will make the difference on the circuit. We know it's on the circuit, drivers make a difference compared to the cars. I think Max driving exceptionally well, and I think he can pull it off. And once you're on call, 1 stop, it just stops, whatever, in Monaco would be unreasonable. Could put another driver, winning, so I would go for that. I think the 2 McLarens are obviously up there. I want to take a little roll of dice and put Charles in P3 in the podium. I think he can do. Charles is, can be exceptional qualifying. I think if he pull off a lap, that he should. So if he wants, could do sometimes in qualifying. qualify in the top 4 and go to the podium. So I'll put him in Q3. And so that leaves me two McLaren for one slot. So I'll have to choose, and it's not an easy one. I'll put Oscar. So I'm a big fan of Oscar. He grew in our academy in Alpine.
Yeah.
So I have a soft spot for him. I think as a driver and as a young man. So I'll put Max, Oscar, and Charles is my podium, and so I'll put Norris as the fastest lap because I assume something happened to him and he was catching up through the field. But that's my wild prediction. Fastest pit stop. I'm not going to go against from numbers, and I'm going to say Pirelli because at the end of the day, I'll make kick up Miles ass in this prediction game, and
Pirelli.
just for the fun of it. Sorry,
You said
oh, Ferrari.
Ferrari. I was going to say,
Ferrari.
we know Pirelli gets the fastest
got an
pit
11th
stop
seat.
every Grand Prix. Fair.
Ferrari.
There's a drought.
Going to win the race, guys. No, sorry, Ferrari. I'm beating that. And P10. You know what? I'll put Nico Hulkenberg, and let's catch up with him here in Imola. I like him a lot as a man. I think he can. He's a good qualifier. He can follow up something in Monaco with his experience, and score a point for Salvador.
I like it. Ian, bring us home.
You know what? I think it's the confidence that Max would have taken out of this race, out of the Imola Grand Prix. I think that's going to spill over into the Monaco weekend, and it's really hard to look beyond a Max victory. As we've all now gone for. So that's 3 out of 3 on this podcast. Second, I'm going to go for Lando. I think he's, as I say, I saw him with the bit back between his teeth in that Grand Prix, the Emilia Romagna. So I'm going to go Lando second. Third, I'm going to go George. I'm going to go a little bit of a wild card as well. I'm going to go George. I think Oscar, I know Oscar's doing well. I know he's really up there, but I think something might happen. Don't know. Just got a sneaking suspicion. Look, I've gone Ferrari fastest pit stop, and I'm not shying away from that. They are clearly the team to beat this year, as Red Bull were once one season, if I remember right. But they pretty much smashed it every Grand Prix. So Ferrari seem to be the team to beat there. I'm going to go them. Fastest lap. That's an interesting. I'm going to go Max again, and then P10. Let me think. I'm going to go Carlos Sainz. There we go.
Interesting. There we go.
Something different.
Amazing stuff. Marcin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're welcome to come on anytime again because it's been absolutely
that was amazing.
Brilliant. And I hope our viewers and listeners have enjoyed it. For those watching this on YouTube, if you have enjoyed it, please do smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and Ian and I will see you this weekend in Monaco. See you later.
Thank you, guys.
As always, take care, folks. Thanks for watching and listening.